So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Namaste Center. It is Sunday, October 26, 2013, and it is our desire to share these messages with you from many wonderful teachers throughout the world who share a message that will enhance all of our well-being and bring more light to every corner of our world. And yesterday, I was one of many who had the great experience to be a part of the Coptic conference and enjoyed the wonderful presenters there. And it is a conference of love and peace and harmony, and I was grateful for the experience. Well, saying that, one of the keynote speakers is one of my favorite authors and teachers of A Course in Miracles, of which I've been a long-time student. And even more than that, Gary Renard was kind enough, he was kind enough to write the foreword to a book that I co-wrote with a mutual good friend of ours, Gene Bogart, who's like a brother to both of us. And he was so generous to do that, so I thank you from my bottom of my heart for that. Thank you. And so when I found out he was going to be here, I was delighted, and then come to find out that his schedule was as such that he was going to have an extra day here from California in the Carolina region. And I asked Bill, well, just ask and see if he's willing to speak on Sunday, and Gary willingly said yes. So that's our miracle here at the Namaste Center. And Gary is author of course, Disappearance of the Universe. It's a great guidebook for anyone interested in the Course in Miracles. For anybody, it's a great spiritual book. And then there's Your Immortal Reality, another wonderful book. And of course, the new one, Love Has Forgotten No One. Is that the right title? Love Has Forgotten No One. And see, it just came off the press. I haven't even read it yet. I just saw it for the first time yesterday, and then I heard you say, except me, right? And so anyway, you were going to title it that, Love Has Forgotten No One Except Me, or you, or whatever. But he kept it just simple. So it is with my great pleasure and honor and delight to introduce and welcome Gary Renard to our center.
I can just hold it. Great, thank you. Hey, how's it going? My name's Gary, and I'm a recovering jerk. It's great to be here. I spoke at the conference yesterday. If you were at the conference yesterday, if you were there, could you please raise your hands? I'd say about 1/3 of you, great. The rest of you, it's okay that you didn't come to hear me speak at the conference. You're going to hell. There's a special dispensation the next time I come. You can come and hear me. Then it'll be okay. But it's great to be here. Charlotte is a good friend. And if you haven't read her book, A Course in Miracles, that she wrote with Gene Bogart, it's really good, and it's very funny. And I highly recommend that. Terry, I'd like to thank you for your music. It's beautiful, absolutely wonderful. That second song gave me shivers when I was listening to, what's it called, The Warmth of Home? Yeah, I'd like to get that, definitely. Thank you. And usually I do workshops on Saturdays, and I'll speak for like 6 or 7 hours. I'm not going to do that today. And Charlotte, if I'm running overtime, you can just let me know.
When people start walking out, you'll know.
Okay. That's good. And usually my wife Cindy does the workshops with me. Cindy's a very experienced spiritual counselor, and she has a master's degree in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica, which is one of the few places in the world where you can actually get an accredited degree in spiritual psychology. And usually Cindy also does some music during our workshops. So today, I was going to ask her to just come up and do maybe one a cappella song for us. in order to get us started. So Cindy, if you could...
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
This is a spontaneous thing. I wasn't going to do this today, but Spirit guided me. So I'm going to sing Amazing Grace a cappella you all before Gary starts speaking. So you don't have to close your eyes, but you can if you want to. I'm going to close mine. It's just my way of invoking Spirit to be with us today. So thank you. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, we have already come. 'Twas grace that brought us safe thus far, and grace will lead us home. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Cindy. She's pretty, too. One of the things that I like to do when I give a presentation is I like to tell a joke every now and then. Because, I think that people, they just take their spirituality so seriously. And I don't think that's necessary. I think the great masters like Buddha and Jesus had a good sense of humor. And they probably like to bring out the joy in other people. A Course in Miracles, which I'm into, one of the 10 characteristics of a teacher of God is joy. And so I'll have to tell a joke every night. So let me say, I'm trying to think of one I didn't say yesterday. Okay, this woman is walking, actually she's driving down the highway in near San Diego in California. She's driving down the highway, she sees a truck broken down on the side of the road. And there's a guy standing near the truck, and he's got 2 monkeys with him. Right, he's got a monkey in each hand, and she's really interested in what's going on. So she pulls over, goes running up to the guy and says, "Hey, what happened? What's going on?" And he said, "Oh, lady, please, can you help me? I got these 2 monkeys here. Right, and I have to get to the San Diego Zoo today. My job depends on it. Okay, I have to get these 2 monkeys to the San Diego Zoo. My truck's broken down. Could you please take these, 2 monkeys to the zoo for me? Here's $100. Just please get them to the zoo for me." And she likes the idea. She's happy, so she takes the 2 monkeys, puts them in her car, rolls up the windows, takes off. Okay, 3 hours later, the guy is driving down the road in San Diego. She sees this woman walking down the sidewalk with these 2 monkeys. Now he's a little angry because he gave her $100 and she gave her word, and he's not very happy. He pulls over, goes running up to her, says, "Hey lady, look, you gave me a word. You said that you would take these 2 monkeys to the zoo. I told you these 2 monkeys had to get to the zoo today. Why didn't you take these 2 monkeys to the zoo?" And she says, "Well, I did take them to the zoo, but I had some money left over, so now I'm taking them to SeaWorld." It's a true story. I mentioned that I'm into A Course in Miracles. That's actually the subject matter of my books, except I'm not the teacher in the books. I'm just the student. And the teachers are these 2 ascended masters who appear to me in person. And they've been doing that for 20 years, which is how long I've been into A Course in Miracles, which is 20 years, because they introduced me to it. I had never heard of it before that. And I picked up A Course in Miracles for the first time, bought a copy, started to read it, and it was like, what the hell is this? It made absolutely no sense whatsoever to me. It may as well have been written in a foreign language. But I noticed after 7 or 8 visits from my teachers that I could go back and read it, and it was actually starting to make sense to me. So that's one of the things that they do in my books, is they take what is a holographic presentation, which is very difficult in A Course in Miracles, because it starts off with its most complicated ideas, its most powerful ideas. Right at the beginning, the first miracle principle is that there is no order of difficulty in miracles. One is not harder or bigger than another. Well, I don't think anybody could possibly pick that up and read that and have any idea what that means, because it's not a linear presentation. It's a holographic presentation, and you find the truth in what the Course is saying in all the different parts. And hopefully through repetition, you start to pick it up after a while. But most people don't, and it ends up sitting on their bookcase, for about 20 years. And one of the things that my books, not because of me, but one of the things that my books do is they help clarify the Course for people in such a way that they can go back and read it and it actually makes sense to them. And my teachers were very generous with me. They spent a lot of time with me. And the first book took 9 years to do. And during that time, I really didn't have any guarantee or any idea whether or not that book would actually ever be published. But through a series of miraculous events, the book was eventually published. Now it's in 22 languages. And it's a lot of fun. My teachers have a good sense of humor. They're kind of like what you would call smart-ass teachers. Because I'm from New England, I have that kind of like smart-ass humor, and I kind of like gave it to them, not expecting that they would give it back to me. But they did. And certainly one of the things I wanted to do was clarify the Course. Now, usually when I speak about the Course, I'll go for like 6 or 7 hours. And what I'm going to try to do right now is give you the Reader's Digest condensed version of the Course. And if there's one story that I think epitomizes what A Course in Miracles is saying, is Jesus' wonderful story of the prodigal son. And in fact, he says, and if you don't know, Jesus is the voice of A Course in Miracles. He's the teacher in the Course. I figured I'd break it to you gently. And I know it's not cool, nowadays to use words like God and Jesus. A lot of spiritual teachers, they avoid words like that. So if you're one of those people, you have a hard time with words like God or Jesus, get over it. Because I don't think you're going to return home to God without acknowledging God. This is about undoing the idea of separation from God, which you could call the ego. Now, the Course uses words in a different way than conventional religion. It uses words in a very big way. So instead of the individual ego, you could think of the ego in A Course in Miracles as the idea of separation. The idea that somehow we have separated ourselves from our source and have taken on this individual identity, this personal existence that seems to be separate from each other and from God, which is our source. And what the Course is about is undoing the ego. In fact, it says salvation is undoing. And if the ego is the false you, well, there's also a real you. And the real you is spirit. The real you is something that is eternal. It's immortal. It's invulnerable. Something that can't be touched by anything in this world, something that can't be threatened by anything in this world. And what the Course undoes the idea of the false you, which is the ego. And the reason that that's a brilliant approach is because if you could do that, if you could actually undo the false you, then eventually the real you would be all that's left. And the real you is already perfect. So you don't have to do anything about that. The real you is already exactly the same as your source, exactly the same as God. But if we really want to understand that, I think we have to realize that spirit is not a partial attribute, as the Course puts it. This is not something that is just part of it. This would be something that is all of it. Exactly the same as your source, exactly the same as God, completely unlimited and everywhere. And the way to get home to that is to undo the ego, and the way that that is done is through a certain kind of forgiveness. But this is not forgiveness the way that the world traditionally thinks of it. This is a kind of forgiveness where you're coming from a place of cause and not effect. Let me explain briefly what I mean by that, because I like to go to the movies. That's my hobby. So I walk into a movie theater and the lights go down and my attention is diverted to the screen. And I might forget that it's not real. I want it to be real. That's why I paid to go in there. So I want it to be true. And maybe I forget that it's not real, and my attention is not only diverted to the screen, but I might even get emotional about the screen. I might even talk to the screen. I might say, no, don't go there. And I forget that there's nothing happening on the screen. It's just an illusion. It's a trick. It's like a sleight of hand. So let's say that I wanted to change what was on that screen. Well, it wouldn't do me too much good to go up and mess around with the screen, because there's nothing there. There's nothing happening. And if I really wanted to change what was on that screen, I would have to remember something. There's this projector, and the projector is hidden. It's in the back. I'm not supposed to think about that. I'm just supposed to think about the screen. But if I really wanted to change what's on that screen, I would have to find that projector. And I would have to change what's in the projector. Now, if I did that, I'd be dealing with the cause instead of just dealing with the effect. That's where the projection is coming from. And if great masters like Jesus and Buddha knew anything, one of the things that they knew was that this world was not being done to them. It was being done by them. It was coming from them. That's the difference between cause and effect. Because if you're at the effect of the world, it will affect you. And if there's anybody in this world that has the power to hurt you or to make you feel bad, well, that's because you gave them that power. You gave them the ability to do that with your belief. It's belief that powers the world and makes it seem so important and makes it seem like it has dominion over us. And what we want to do, if we don't want to be at the effect of the world, then we want to come from a place of cause where we're saying that we're not a victim. We're not a victim as the world we see, as the Course in Miracles puts it. So that's the difference between cause and effect, and the kind of forgiveness that I'm talking about comes from a place of cause and not effect. And if you do that, it will lead to a different experience. As you undo the false you, the ego, then your experience can start to change from the experience of being a body to the experience of being spirit. Because there's something that we don't know about the ego. The ego likes this idea of separation. The ego wants to keep it going. It feels special. It feels important to have an individual identity and a personal existence. And so the ego wants to keep that going. The ego is very afraid because this is all the ego knows. And to the ego, this is death to the ego. So the ego is not going to go quietly. But if you undo the ego, your experience can start to change from the experience of being a body, because that's the ego's number one game plan to keep this thing going, is to convince you that you're a body. Because if you're a body, then the entire ego idea of separation is true. The whole thing is true. But what if you're not a body? As A Course in Miracles puts it, I'm not a body, I'm free. For I am still as God created me. Well, then you can start to get to a point where you're not at the effect of the world. Because if your happiness and your peace of mind is dependent on the world, you're screwed. Because the only thing you can depend on in the world is that it's going to change. This is a world of shift and change. That's all it does. It goes good. Well, that's good. Then it goes bad. Then it gets badder. Then it gets really bad. But then it goes good. Well, that's good. Then it goes bad. Then it goes bad. Then it goes good. Good. Then it goes bad. And it keeps doing it over and over and over again. And maybe after 1 million years or so, you catch on to the fact that that's all it does. It just keeps shifting and changing. But whatever is true, it does not shift or change. As the Course puts it, whatever is true is eternal and cannot change or be changed. So the truth, which is God, is a constant. It's not something that shifts or changes. It's something that is always the same, which means that it's dependable. It's something that you can depend upon. It's what Jesus was talking about 2,000 years ago when he talked about building your house upon the rock instead of the sand. The sand is the shifting sands of this world. But the rock doesn't change. The rock is dependable. It's something that you can count on. So what we're doing with A Course in Miracles is we're withdrawing our belief in something that cannot be dependent on, and we're putting our belief where it belongs, which is something that can be dependent upon. And you can get to the point where your happiness and your peace of mind is not dependent on what goes on in the world. And that's real freedom. And it's also real spirituality. Because spirituality today has become totally confused with the self-help movement. Not that I have anything against the self-help movement. I've used it in my life, and I've used it successfully. I'm just saying that I know it's not the be-all and end-all of anything. That real spirituality is not dependent on the world of form. It's something that can be there for you in your experience. And it's possible for you to experience what you really are and where you really are, even while you appear to be here, walking around in a body. There's an experience that the Course describes as the complete but temporary suspension of doubt and fear. And that's the great mystical experience that the masters of history have talked about. And as you undo the ego, spirit is moving in and taking over the mind in a good way, in a positive way. It's like you're, kind of like transforming to a higher life form. Being spirit is a higher life form than being a body. But in order to get there, you have to go through kind of like a metamorphosis, kind of like an incubation period. A caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly overnight. It happens gradually because you have to be prepared for a higher life form. And because spirit is in a condition of peace, your mind has to be, kind of like brought back to a condition of peace. Or else you wouldn't be able to fit into the kingdom, because the kingdom is at peace. It would be like trying to fit a square block into a round hole. It just wouldn't work. So what we do is we go through this metamorphosis to a higher life form. And that metamorphosis is facilitated by forgiveness. And, Jesus obviously got to the point where he could forgive people even while they were destroying his body. And most people nowadays can't even forgive people who have done nothing to them. So the bar is set pretty high there. And that's okay. It's not easy. I'm not here to say that forgiveness coming from a place of cause and not effect is easy. In fact, it sucks because they don't deserve it. But what happens is, as you go along, you start to realize that you're the one who's getting the benefits of your forgiveness. And that's because of the way that the mind works. To put it as briefly as I can, your unconscious mind, which is the part of the mind that we can't see, is what's running the world. That's what's responsible for all the madness and the mayhem and the terrorism and the violence and the murder and the personal compulsions and addictions that people have. It's being run by a part of the mind that they can't see, that is controlling them. And what A Course in Miracles does in working with the Holy Spirit is that it undoes all this unconscious stuff that is there in the mind that is damaging people and running people, and returns the unconscious mind to a condition of spirit. Because as you forgive that which is right in front of your face, the Holy Spirit is taking care of the big part of the job. The Holy Spirit is taking care of the part of the job that you can't see. So the Course actually says that your part is very small. But I'm sure that idea is very annoying to the ego. But to the Holy Spirit, well, the Holy Spirit can see everything. The Holy Spirit can see everything that ever happened, from the beginning of time to the end of time. And the Holy Spirit, at the end of time, worked out a plan. I know it's pretty metaphysical, but at the end of time, the Holy Spirit worked out a plan where it was decided with your mind when it would be the right time for you to awaken. Because this illusion, as it's been called for thousands of years by different disciplines, Course in Miracles takes that idea and further refines it into the idea that this is a dream that we will awaken from. And it's that awakening that is reality. And it's that awakening that is enlightenment. It's what Buddha meant when he said, "I am awake." Most people nowadays, they think that when Buddha said, "I am awake," that he meant that he felt amazingly alert and ready to manifest like hell. But that's not what he meant. He didn't mean he was more awake in the dream, which is what passes for enlightenment among most people. He didn't mean that he was more awake in the dream. He meant that he had awakened from the dream. That he'd awakened from the entire dream of time and space and realized that he was the one who was doing it. So now he wasn't in the dream, he was the dreamer. And he realized that it was coming from him, which meant that he wasn't a victim, which is a place of power, because there's no power in being a victim. But there's plenty of power in being a cause and realizing that you're the one that is doing it. Then you can, as the Course puts it, deny the ability of anything not of God to affect you. And you can get to the point where the world cannot affect you. But I've gotten way too serious. I realize I haven't told you a joke in a long time, so just quickly, it's a short one. This guy takes a woman out to dinner. Right, and all he does for like an hour and a half is he talks about himself. He talks about how much money he makes, his car, how good he is at sports, his house, all the great things that are going on in his life. And all he does for like an hour and a half, he just goes on and on and on about himself. But after an hour and a half, he says to the woman, he says, "But enough about me. What do you think about me?" Remember, I told that joke once in Calgary, and this woman in the audience yelled out, "That's no joke." But I mentioned it's possible to change your experience. And as you undo the ego, maybe your body will start to feel lighter. Maybe you'll start to feel more like the figure in a dream that it really is, instead of this thing that you have to carry around. Maybe it'll be more difficult to hurt it. Maybe it'll become more elastic. Maybe you'll be on an airplane and you've been traveling for such a long time, you forget that there's this overhead above you. And you get up and you crack your head on the overhead. And it's really loud, like everybody in the plane can hear it. And it doesn't hurt. And you say to yourself, "Well, that's weird. That should have hurt. That was what I really cracked my head there." And there'll be situations as you go along that used to bother you psychologically or hurt you physically. And they happen and you're not hurt. And when you realize that, then you also realize that there are basic changes going on in your unconscious mind. As you practice the kind of forgiveness where you're coming from a place of cause, the Holy Spirit is actually healing the unconscious mind, because what you're forgiving is kind of like a symbolic representation of that which exists in your own unconscious mind. So your unconscious mind knows everything, and one of the things that it knows is that there's really just one of us. There's really just one of us here. There's one ego appearing as many. What the Hindus called the world of multiplicity. It's the one appearing as many. But there's really just one of us, and your unconscious mind knows that because it knows everything. It would have to, by definition, because that's where the projection of the universe of time and space is coming from in the first place. The American Indians used to say, "Behold the great mystery." Well, A Course in Miracles says, "Behold the great projection," because that's all that it is. This is just one great big mother freaking projection that we put ourselves on like a spell. And the Course uses the word dispel it several times, because that's what we're doing. Rather than being under the influence and the power of the world, we're switching to being under the influence and the power of God, which is a totally different experience. And spiritual experience is very important. It's the only thing that will ever make you happy. Words won't do it. Theology won't do it. My words won't do it. They're just words. And words are but symbols of symbols, according to the Course. They're twice removed from reality. So how is the symbol of a symbol ever going to make you happy? You know, even a description of reality, which once again is this perfect spirit that is exactly the same as God. The Course at one point describes heaven as the awareness of perfect oneness and the knowledge that there is nothing else. Nothing else outside this oneness, nothing else within. Even a description of that reality can't make you happy because it's just words. But an experience of that reality, that will make you happy. Because it's something that is full and whole and complete and satisfying. You know, it's something that is all of it, not just a partial thing. And it's possible to experience that even while you appear to be here. Maybe you'll be sitting around and your body will seem to disappear momentarily, not for a long time at first. But your body will just seem to disappear. The world will seem to disappear. And what's left in its place is a reality that is this brilliant and beautiful abstraction that blows away anything that this world has to offer. You know, it's so much beyond this world that when you experience it, you realize that that has to be the truth. Because it's so much more real than the temporary, fleeting world that we experience from day to day. And once you experience that, you never go back. Because you realize that is so much better. And you can't really describe it. You can't really describe what it's like, except that it's not like this world at all. And that's when you know that you've experienced that. And when I do a workshop, I usually have a question and answer session that Cindy usually participates in with me. And people will usually ask some pretty heavy questions. Like somebody will raise their hand and they'll say, well, you know, how did I get here? And I'll say, well, you know, according to A Course in Miracles, you're not here. And they'll say, yeah, I know, but how did I get here? It's kind of a circular thing.